Item 7, presentation by CenterPoint Energy on recent outages, work performed with the current and future improvements to the infrastructure. I'm going to call on Mr. Dominique Robinson, who's been around for a few years as the representative and face to the City of Stafford and other cities around here. He will introduce the team that he's brought with us, and I want to thank all of you from CenterPoint for coming forward and wanting to make this presentation to the City of Stafford. So you can start it off and introduce your team, Dominique.
Sure will. Thank you, Mayor Willis, City Council, staff, and residents of the City of Stafford. I'm Dominic Robinson, Regional Director for Operations within CenterPoint Energy. I do have several folks with us. I won't go around the entire list, but I will give you the ones that will initially be presenting, and we will be available with SMEs in case at the end of the presentation there are any questions. So I have Takia Rita. She's our Power Delivery Solutions Director. We have, God dang it.
Gary O'Neill.
Gary O'Neill, who is our forester, and we have Stephen Docker, who's one of our engineers within our development group. We also have a group of basically everybody almost on that side there as well to speak with you today. So again, thank you for.
I hope you don't have a problem anywhere because everybody's here.
Right. Exactly. So with that, I'll turn it over to Takia to get us started, and I will chime in, hand it over to Stephen, and then hand it over to Gary.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Takia Reeder. I'm the Director over Service Delivery for CenterPoint in the South Region. And as Dominic mentioned, we work very closely in a partnership to support service delivery in our great city. Really quickly, we're going to kind of talk about some of the events that transpired in September. I know that that is top of mind for your constituents and residents in this great community. What we'll do is just kind of talk about outage history at a high level, and then we'll talk through what happened in September. And then from there, we'll talk about next steps, what we're going to do to improve over the next couple of years. Then we'll invite Gary up to talk about vegetation and to give some tips on what that looks like for the community. So I want to acknowledge that September was rough. That's no surprise to anyone, right? The good story, though, is in 2018, there were no recorded circuit level outages for the whole year. In 2019, there were only 6 momentary outages, the longest lasting 24 seconds. In 2020, there were 2 momentary outages, both lasting no more than 5 seconds each. That brings me to 2021. So I'm not going to talk through the storm. We all get it. We know that. I think the big deal here is about what happened after the storm. And so to clarify, in September, there were 6 sustained outages. 1 was due to a falling tree in an easement. The other was due to a car hit pole. And then 4 were due to equipment. And then we have someone here that will address what we've done to resolve that. We've had 6 momentary outages, 4 attributed to the hurricane and 2 other. What I want to express to you all is it's a different time that we're living in. So even though they're momentary in nature, we understand that we still have people working from home. And this is important to us as well. So I think what you'll find over the next slide, Dominic will cover at a high level what we found from our inspections and what we've done to resolve it. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dominic to cover our inspection results.
Thank you, Takia. So like Takia said, after we got the calls and had the number of outages in September, we went into action for inspections to see what was going on with the circuit that services that area. So during that inspection in September, we both did visual as well as infrared inspections of our service lines. We identified vegetation management, which is Gary's group, that came out and found vegetation in a couple of locations, one at North Main and Staffordshire, the other at Brand and Ethel Lane. As of right now, the status of that is about 8.3 miles of circuit that need to be trimmed. That all should be completed by the end of this week. So we are actively doing that. I know there may be some questions about if you see the various tree trimmers out, that's what they're doing. They're clearing that circuit. We did have some identified locations that we were able to detect by the infrared, because if you go out and look visually with the naked eye, you don't see everything. Once you use the infrared, you would see hot spots or spots that need attention. as I believe we've corrected all of those conditions that had that above normal temperature, and we were able to resolve that. As of the 15th, I think all those areas were addressed by the operations team. We also have some sections that will go an upgrade in the future. One of them is at 90 and Murphy. That is within a transmission easement, so there's a lot of coordination between our group, which is distribution, and transmission. Just to give you an idea, distribution is what goes to your house. Transmissions is what you see on the big towers. They go to the substation, they get stepped down and then feed to your house. So that group, when you're doing anything within transmission, requires a lot of coordination because there's a very serious effect right there. We do have those work orders have been created for Stafford 6. When I say Stafford 6, we do have a number of circuits. That is the main one that we had issues with in September. I believe beginning the first part, it may be on the other slides of those dates. That estimated cost is about $300,000 that we will invest, and we should have that completed sometime next year. Okay. We did have some identified areas where after probably about the first 2 or 3 incidents, we did find an issue that was off of Brandon 90. There were some low communication cables. So a truck came through, pulled down those lines. When it does that, obviously it causes an outage, but also it does create stress in other areas. So we were able to take care of all those multiple areas from 90 to Brand, all the way to Murphy. So all that work has been completed. We do have contact with all the other attachers. There's probably about 5 of them from Verizon, Comcast, Phonoscope, AT&T, PS Lightwave, that we have identified areas that they do need to raise their facilities up, because it's very unlikely that our facilities are actually the ones being contacted. So if you look at any power lines and you see 4 lines up top and 2 or 3 at the bottom, those 2 or 3 are communication. We're always the highest on the pole. But when those high loads come through, or dump truck or things of that nature, it pulls it. At that point, the poles will sag, and it potentially could impact our lines as well. So that's what we've done so far from the investigations and from the inspections. Again, all that work is being completed. I know there's a concern about, hey, we're growing, we're getting the new businesses in. What does that have for Stafford moving forward from a development standpoint? With that, we do typically have our plans set ahead of time. So Mr. Stephen Dockery will come up and cover that with you guys.
Like Dominic said, I'm in the distribution planning group. We're responsible for looking ahead. A few years ago, we noticed that we're getting a lot of new loads in the area, and we decided to look at the plan now. We did a plan back in 2019 that was just a kind of switch load around, because we noticed some high capacity stuff. That was mainly from 2 megawatts from 12 kV, which feeds the city and right around it. We upgraded that 35. We have one currently in the plan process, very beginning stages, that'll be passed around to the different departments and approved by next April. And then work completed will be done prior to peak of 2023. So in the summer of 2023 is when the work is projected to be done. We're currently looking at adding a 35 kV transformer to the Stafford substation and 2 new circuits. One of the 12 kV circuits will be converted, which will free up some load for the city and surrounding areas. For the substations around the city, not just Stafford, we've done a couple plans since 2017 where we pulled 6 new feeders and added 1 transformer in the area to increase capacity. Make sure I have everything done. And then we'll pass it to Gary to talk about tree trimming.
Thanks, Stephen. I've taken and made copies of the presentation that I'll be giving, and I think I have enough for everybody in the room. If you care to follow along, that'd be great. As mentioned, I'm Gary O'Neill, one of several foresters that work for CENTERPOINT Energy, and I'd like to real briefly just tell you some highlights of our vegetation or our tree trimming program at CenterPoint. Okay, here we go. If you think of CenterPoint, I think it's pretty common to just think of, well, they're the electric company here in Houston. But CenterPoint is a pretty good-sized company in multiple states. And besides serving electricity here in the Houston area, we also have gas concerns, gas businesses all across the United States. And we have about 2.5 million customers or meters, if you will, here in the Houston area. We have about 4.5 million meters in 8 different states for gas. So that's just a little bit at high level about our company. Let's talk about the tree trimming program. All across the United States, every electric utility company in the United States has a tree trimming program, depending upon the growth cycle. Here down south, where we have maybe a 9 or a 10-month growing season, we have a little bit more of an aggressive or a vigorous program, as opposed to maybe Minnesota with 6 months of winter, 5-6 months of winter. All across the United States, over $2 billion a year is spent every single year on vegetation management, just trying to keep trees away from the power line. Takia had mentioned one of the outages that we had in September was from a tree that fell that was inside the right-of-way. And so that's part of our job, is to spot trees that are close to the power line and need to be trimmed, or dead, diseased, or dying trees, and address them. No matter where you go, whether you're in Minnesota, or Alaska, or here in Houston, at any utility company, the #1 cause of electrical outages, far and away, is usually vegetation, trees getting into the power lines at any single one. You might say, so let's talk a little bit about the program to try to keep vegetation-related outages at a minimum and keep them from occurring. There's a lot of moving parts. Why we trim? Of course, we trim to keep the lights turned on so your lights don't go off, or so they don't blink. We also trim for public safety reasons. If we have a tree that's up in the power lines and you have a boy that likes to climb trees, or a girl that likes to climb trees, they could be in danger climbing up that tree if it's in a power line. So for public safety and for the reliability of the electric system, we'll talk a little bit about trees and the relationship to power lines. Palm trees themselves, a very unique thing here in the South, and how we have to address them. And then our Right Tree, Right Place program that we have. And then we'll talk a little bit about storm work. And again, I will thank you for the opportunity to come and speak. And I am aware of the time, and I appreciate your time. What'd they say?
Keep going.
Okay. So, quit yammering. You're going. So here's a little example, a slide of when we get to a situation just before it begins to get becomes a problem, before and after the vegetation management program. Depending upon the voltage of the power line, that will dictate how far away we trim the trees, and I'll get into that in a little bit. CenterPoint has 125 tree crews that they employ that go out. I used to say we trim trees 7 days a week, except on Sundays. But so 6 days a week we have tree crews go out and trim trees, and we're looking at starting a pilot program to begin trimming a 7th day a week, just to try to keep up with the tree growth. So 125 tree crews here in the Houston area at any one of our given locations leave every single morning. They work 10-hour days, 6 days a week, and trim and remove trees that we've identified that's getting close to the power lines, all to keep the lights on and to keep people safe. About 1 million trees a year. About 85% of the work that we do is scheduled well in advance. We know on a given circuit, we're trimming Stafford 6 is one of our 12 kV circuits right now, and we knew several years ago that at this point in time, that we would be here unless something else occurred. So we have a very forward-looking approach to when we're going to trim trees. It's very cyclical in nature, and about 85% of our work is well planned out. About the other 15% is very reactive work because things are not static. It's a dynamic situation. Trees grow at different rates and depending upon weather and soil and other climatic conditions, you're going to have areas of town that need to be addressed more often than every 5 to 6 years, which is our normal cycle length. So that other 15% of our resources is spent doing reactive work where we've identified problems such as after a storm that we just mentioned. Come out and take a look at the issues and say, well, we need to trim a couple of spans each direction, a couple of addresses. So it's two pieces, proactive and reactive, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. We track all of the service interruptions. Every time electricity goes out, we have a very robust program that captures all that. We are able to capture the reliability of individual circuits, the customers on that circuit. Very, very sophisticated way to look at where the problems are, what caused the outages, and then how we can address that, the problems, whether it's trees or equipment. Roughly 25–30% of all of the outages that would occur on our system in a year are attributed to trees. If you want, you could probably factor into that some that are caused by wind that maybe blew a tree over. And then another common factor is maybe a squirrel or another animal that got into the wires and caused an outage. If you think about the power lines as a highway, squirrels like to run up and down the highway, and tree limbs are the on-ramp and the off-ramp to the highway. So if we can keep trees back, we reduce the number of squirrel fatalities in town too. We primarily trim trees, and depending upon the voltages, we have two set distances that we trim trees. The lower voltage 12 kV, we trim trees back 7 feet away from our facilities. And when we trim the trees, we try to make a good proper cut rather than just coming back and just making a stub or a cut. We come back to where there's a leader or a lateral, a good horticultural, arboricultural correct cut on the tree. And what that will do is that'll minimize the sprouting on the tree, which will be back up into the lines in a couple years. So we come back 7 feet as a rule, but if we have to come back a little further to get to make a proper cut, we'll do that as well. So we take it very seriously. We love trees. That's how we all got into this line of work. But we look at them a little differently when they're in and around the power lines. On occasion, we do remove trees. Probably more than half of the trees growing up in our power lines were never planted really by anybody. They were what we call volunteer trees. The wind blew a seed, or maybe a bird sat on one of our power lines and it had eaten a mulberry, and it dropped the mulberry seed wrapped in fertilizer, and it fell to the ground, and then up comes a mulberry tree right underneath our power lines. So a lot of the trees that we address are not trees that were part of a planned landscape. They were volunteer trees. In addition, if you're out and about and you see what you think is a hazardous situation, our main number, 713-207-2222 is our main number. Call in, report a condition that you see. Sometimes there'll be arcing or sparking in a high wind situation where trees get into power lines, and we take that very seriously. We can come out and address that. Okay. How trees cause outages? Well, really two ways. They just get near the power lines or into the power lines, and they'll create a fault current, an arc, and it will blow a fuse or blow a transformer or a ladder. It'll blow a piece of equipment and turn the lights off. If you think about it in a simple term, it's really no different than the switch the breaker box inside your house. If you've overloaded a circuit in the kitchen or doing something like that, you'll blow a breaker in the garage. It's really the same type of a scenario, not much different. So just an electrical outage due to a tree getting near the wires, or a mechanical outage where a tree itself will just completely fail, fall, break, come across our power lines. And that's typically, you get a lot of that during storms. When Nicholas came through, and we had a lot of that in the southern portions of our service territory. Well, as you might guess, we trim trees, and the reason we do that, I mentioned, public safety, for reliability. It's pretty important to keep the infrastructure of the city intact. Dispatches for emergency services, sewer lift stations, we need to keep the power on those things. When those go down, things get dicey quick. There's a lot of infrastructure within the community. The radio stations and television stations, we all have plans to keep those places online. Okay, a simple tree, a broken limb across a line will cause an outage. As you might guess, we have lots of different trees here in the Houston area, and we've got them grouped into 3 different categories. And as you might guess, some grow faster than others. And then there's a 3rd category, palm trees. We'll talk about palms in a minute. I'd be remiss if I didn't just talk real quickly about the very last stretch of wire that comes in to serve your home. And we refer to that as the service drop. The one that comes in and serves the meter to your house is a line that we don't trim. We don't really have a right of way on that across your yard. We don't have an easement. And so we serve your home, but we use a wire that's a very heavy constructed wire, and it's designed to go through trees. It's designed to take quite a bit of an abuse. But we do get a lot of calls each year to trim around the service drop. And unless something's really pushing hard on it or a limb is falling on it, it's not something that we do. We concentrate our resources on the wires from pole to pole. In some areas of town, the services are underground, and we have little green boxes. Maybe you've got one in your yard or seen one. And we would encourage you, the first thing homeowners want to do is to hide that, and they do so by planting shrubs all around it. And so we would just encourage you to about 5 foot back from there, because we do have to get in there and perform maintenance. Palm trees. It's odd that we call them trees because botanically speaking, a palm is not a tree. It's more closely related to a piece of grass or a corn stalk. Given that, the way they grow, there's really no way to prune them like you would an oak. Once a palm tree gets within 8-10 feet of our power lines, because of the way they grow, all their growth is at the top or of the terminal bud. If you were to trim that off, you would kill the tree. Once a palm tree that's in our right-of-way or our easement gets up about that high, there's usually only one course of action, and that's to remove the tree. Now, I grew up north, and my goal was to always live in a place where I could have palm trees in my yard, and I've got palm trees in my yard, but I have a power line in my yard too. So I have to be careful about the relationship between the two of them. Most of the time, if you have a palm tree in your yard, it's usually a part of a focal part of a landscape, a water feature, a swimming pool, or something like that. So, and it really drastically changes the look in your yard when we remove a palm tree. And it's something that I don't really enjoy doing. It's probably one of the hardest things I have to do because I love trees. But for the sake of public safety, once trees get that size, palms, there's only one course of action, and that's to remove them. And any support that we can get along the way is appreciated. Palm trees, if they're not pruned, you've seen the dead fronds, they'll catch fire, a very big hazard. So I've talked a lot about trees and mainly the wrong tree in the wrong place. So we do have a program, the right tree in the right place, and we've worked with other communities across our service territory, planting trees, planting pollinator plots, donating trees, having tree giveaways. And that's all in an effort to, we love to give back to our communities, but this is where we work, but it's where we live too. So, I mean, trees are a very important part of what make us comfortable. They give us happiness and joy, and if you go into the woods, there's just something about going into the woods. The air is cleaner, it's fresher, it's quiet, you can sit, you know. And you can capture some of that even here in the urban area by planting trees. So we do our very best to give back to the community, and we have tree plantings and tree giveaways throughout the spring and autumn months of the year. This Saturday, we'll be planting 46 trees down on Galveston with the Galveston Island Tree Conservancy, something that I enjoy doing. And then we're having our annual tree giveaway the following Saturday, the 30th of this month, and that's over in the area of 34th and Ella, and we'll be giving away 1,500 trees that are in 3-gallon pots, and we do this in coordination or in conjunction with the Arbor Day Foundation and Trees for Houston, a wonderful, great ally, Trees for Houston that we have. So we have a lot of opportunities to get out into our communities and make sure that if a tree is planted, that it's the right tree for that place, and if it's a taller tree, that it's planted well away from our power lines so that we don't have to trim it. We would rather not have to come into your yard and trim the tree. It looks a little misshapen when we're done trimming it. It will always grow back again, but in 4 to 5 years' time, we're back having to trim the tree again. It's best if we didn't have to, for everybody. We have a nursery behind our Bel Air Service Center location that we grow up several thousand trees each year in coordination with Trees for Houston. Most of the time, these trees are for the greater community good. They're not a one, we cut a tree down in your yard and we'll give you one of these trees. What we typically like to do is to put them into parks, along boulevards, esplanades, where everybody can, the greater community can get enjoyment out of them. And a little about Winter Storm Uri. We heard a little bit about that. The trees that got hit the worst here in the Houston area, you probably, were palms, of course. And then the white oaks got hit pretty hard, and then ash trees got hit pretty hard. So consequently, we're getting a lot of calls about dead trees near our power lines. If you know of one, call our main number. We'll come out, and we have a program where we don't necessarily remove the entire tree. We'll make it safe. So we'll trim it back 10 feet away from our power lines and allow your private contractor to finish removing the trees, because nobody wants a dead tree to fall on a home or the power line or a garage. And one other item that's often, it's not broadcast real well, is limbs from storm work. So most of our work is done during the daylight hours, but from time to time a storm will come through, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, if line crews are out and in order to get your power back on, they've got to trim some trees in your backyard and do some work on the equipment. CenterPoint does not return to pick up the limbs that they cut at that 2 o'clock in the morning type situation. Any limbs that we cut during the daytime, we do pick them up that same day. But I do spend a lot of time on the phone after storms, talking to homeowners, explaining our program, our policy, that we won't come back and pick up limbs that were cut during the middle of a night to get the lights turned back on. A tree fell over and took our wires out, things of that nature. We don't come back and clean that up. So there it is briefly. I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Any of us would be glad to answer any questions about, and I think we have one more presentation, don't we? No. Okay. Anything about the tree program, about our outage history? Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, sir. You said when you cut the tree limbs in the nighttime, you don't pick up the limbs. Is it possible that you can come the following day when there is a sunlight during the daytime?
If we know about it in advance, we can, but quite often, things happen at 2 in the morning all the time. And so any work that's done outside the scope of planned work, we don't come back the following day in the light of day to pick it up. Was that the question?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think to that point is, if we're running trouble, or so you have your power's out, and we have to go out there to restore the service, and we go out there and find that a tree limb has impacted the line or things of that nature, and we need to cut it away. Anytime we do that, we don't necessarily take that debris back with us, right? And if your lights go out for 2 o'clock in the morning, that was his example, then we're not gonna wait till the daytime to try to get your lights back on. We're gonna do it at that point. But anytime we do what I would call a reactive trim for existing outage, we may or may not take that tree limb home. We're just cutting that tree limb to be able to get your service restored. If it's scheduled, like we do on a regular circuit trim, then we do trim it. That's when you see the big trees, Inc., Davy, so on and so forth, going through the neighborhood. When that happens, they do take that debris back to the service center with them. But if one of our crews are responding to restore your service, they may not necessarily take that debris home. Back to the service center, rather.
Maybe you might have to change the policy.
Well, they're not tree trimmers at that point. They're just doing what they have to do to get your service back on. When the tree trimmers come out, they do take it back.
You are in management, so suggest to the higher management to change the policy so that customers will be happy.
I got you, sir.
Councilman Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Guerra.
Yes, sir. I don't know if you realize that Stafford's made up of very few new neighborhoods.
I'm sorry.
Very few new neighborhoods. They're all aging 30, 40, some 50.
Yes, sir.
With all that said, the biggest problem that I'm hearing now, of course, it's inconvenient to have your electricity go out, and it's just inconvenient. But with the equipment that these homes have, air conditioners, refrigerators, freezers, computers, where the power surges when they come on and off, and it's not just like it just goes off, but there's been a few times where the power goes off, 2-3 minutes, it comes back on, and then the power comes back on. All those power surges are affecting all the older equipment. And I've had some complaints that, what do I do? My 10-year-old refrigerator has gone out. It cost me $1,000 then, and now I got to pay $2,000 for a new refrigerator. Or my air conditioner just got burned out, and I can't pinpoint it, but it was working fine. And I had it serviced, and there was no indication that I was going to be looking at any problems. And now we got all these power outages, and now I'm going to buy another compressor. Computers. Some people, I guess, don't understand that you have to have power strips that are surge protectors for your equipment. And that's another problem there, where it affects your modems. It affects your complete computer system in your home. Those are the kind of problems that I'm getting called on.
Yes, sir.
I understand about all the trees and all that, but when you have, let's say, an older family, and they're on a fixed income, and they're going to have to buy now a $2,000 refrigerator or a $4,000 investment in a compressor, that's an ouch.
Yes, sir.
And those are the things that I'm listening to, and it wasn't just like once or twice. I've had those calls several times.
Well, thank you for that question, Councilman Guerra. A couple things. If you do have that in a series, typically what you have is some type of fault on the distribution line. And what happens is that system schematically actively disconnects the service momentarily for the fault to clear. Typically, we'll do that up to 3 times. If it does not do it, if it doesn't resolve itself by the third time, it actually locks out. And by lockout means you're gonna have a sustained outage. So that's the system doing what it's doing by design. So if a line hits it, it momentarily interrupts the service. If it clears, then the service is restored. But it will do that up to 3 times before it does it permanently. We do take each one of those cases separately. If that does happen, we do have a claims department that will investigate it. If it's an issue with our equipment, and they go back and get with the customers and see if there is a resolution. That may not always be the case, but we do have an avenue for that. The other thing is all the equipment, all the devices. One of the things Takia said, now that more folks are working from home, if I'm working in the middle of the day and 2 o'clock that happens, I won't notice it because I'm at work. But now that folks are working from home with COVID, so on and so forth, homeschooling, they see it more often, and they're using their computer. So all those devices are more sensitive. A lot of the devices are a lot more sensitive than our current schematic for our standards, and that's across the board. Everything gets more and more sensitive. And those things are not everything that we can do, but those are things where you can advise folks that they can get protection devices on their side, whether it be a UPS or a surge protector and things of that nature, but that would protect that. But if you do have some older residents or in older neighborhoods that need that type of assistance, we probably can get them in contact with some folks that may be able to assist. But if they do have an issue with appliances, there is a route for them to go. They look at it on an individual basis, so I can't, paint it with a broad stroke, say anytime that happens X or anytime that happens Y. Each and every case will be investigated.
The other question was that, could it be that the actual grid is aged to the point where it does have those kind of conditions and problems, whereas CenterPoint's going out in the new neighborhoods and not coming back into the old neighborhoods to revamp those aging pieces of equipment?
Typically
And
not.
then the other situation, and I know we've talked about this years and years ago, and is the cost effectiveness is way out of line, and then that's go underground instead of having telephone poles.
Right. Underground doesn't solve all the issues because you do have your water issues when you have flooding. So a Harvey, for instance, from a hurricane perspective, was a different event than Nicholas. So some of the issues that you may not have experienced in Harvey because things were underwater, you experienced with Nicholas because it's wind, and vice versa. So from that standpoint, you have to equate that, but yes, it's more expensive to go underground. As far as from the customers and the distribution system, we did talk about, Stephen talked about some of the improvements we have planning moving forward, but anytime there's an outage, there is a cause. It's not simply because the infrastructure is aged. Something is impacting that line that's causing it to go off and go on, go off, go on, or if it's an equipment device. And the best thing about, I hate to say this about outages, are if it does actually go out, then we can actually pinpoint what the device is and replace it and make those improvements.
Sometimes it's coincidental,
Yeah.
but things happen.
Yes, sir.
And another population that's been calling me was the businesses. When Dairy Queen calls me and McDonald's calls me and Starbucks calls me, and they're saying they can't operate like this without complete outages, and that shuts down their business.
Right.
You can't have a running business. And one of the things about this city, we survive literally on zero property tax, and it all comes out of the cash register. And when Highway 90 gets shut down and all these new fast food places go to shut down, and the businesses, that's an ouch.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
those are the kind of things we're looking at.
Yes.
And I'm hearing it not only, like I said, from the residents, but from our fast food restaurants. You can't have people sitting in the restaurant in the dark.
Right.
You can't cook.
Right.
You can't, it's just not working.
No, sir, I couldn't agree more, and that's why we went into action once we got the notifications of the outages. I think the first one, you think, hey, it's just something going on, but after that, that's why we did the inspections, that's why we had the remediation plan, and that's why we acted upon it. Because you're right, this whole strip here, Like you said, if the businesses are down, they can't make money, they can't have their livelihood, let alone the residents not having power in their homes. So never is our goal not to have any resident or any business without power if we can possibly avoid it. And that's what we try to do.
And I don't have to tell you how expensive it is for these residential areas, because I install them. And those are the natural gas generators that are coming up on the market. And you have about a 12, as much as 12 months waiting list to get a generator put in. And that's a $15,000, $16,000 investment. And those are the things that the population are starting to look at. They don't feel comfortable with CenterPoint and the conditions of their home. There's one thing when you have a disaster or let's say a freeze where it knocks out a large area, but when you have no conditions, like one of my constituents said, I turned on the ceiling fan, did that knock out my electricity?
Right.
You know, they're just for no reason, and good conditions, our electricity was getting knocked over. I understand cars hit poles and all that, but when you have sometimes older people get a little unreasonable, but that's what we have to listen to.
Well, I mean, those are very valid points. The first thing, there's no thing as perfect power. You are going to have outages, and we're not going to say there won't be power outages. What we do try to do is mitigate those outages with our action plans. As far as the generators, you're right. Anytime there's a big disaster, whether it's Uri or Nicholas, all the generators, and they have to come through us to do an automatic transfer switch in order to have it flip-flop between the system and our distribution and their generator. And those are at an all-time high. And it's mainly because of Uri, because, you know, if it's in the summertime, you can probably cool off a lot easier than when you're in the wintertime, you can't warm up as quickly. So you're right. All those, and that's across the system, they're at a high, and we do respond to those, but to again, not trying to say our team is going to do anything to have perfect power without outages, but we're going to do everything we can to mitigate them, and our operations team will try to respond as quickly as possible to restore it when they do go out.
Even your portable generators, not necessarily the ones that are run by natural gas. If you pay an electrician to set you up with a special plug that you can tie a big enough portable generator, that's close to $400 just to do the apparatus on your breaker box, and that's not counting. Let's say if you spend about $1,200 on a generator, and then you got to store the fuel, and now they're getting a little more sophisticated because you can get one that's gas, diesel, and propane, but those are that's all tied together.
Yes, sir. Well, I think the point is we're not trying to deny any customer, resident, commercial, or otherwise of service. We're here to provide that service. And unfortunately, when there are those instances that cause them to have to go to look for alternative sources, such as natural disasters, which is typically 99% of the time that it does cause that to happen. There are costs associated with that, but the other, 101% of the time that we have the power on and are giving everybody good service, we try to do our best we can.
Any other member? Councilman Rose?
Yeah, please. I'm one of those people that I live in Dove Country, and the reliability is zero for Dove Country. And I would really like an explanation of the grid. Maybe you can forward that to us, because I may not have power, but Kingsway has power. And it's just broken up into various, but yeah, I'm having to spend $16,000 because I lose power all the time. Clear day, beautiful, wind's not blowing, and I lose power for 4 hours.
Well, I can certainly get your address and look it up.
Well, I like for the whole subdivision, because my neighbors, and what my concern is that we are an aging neighborhood, an aging city, and a lot of these people are on medical equipment, whether it's breathing or dialysis or whatever, and for them not to have reliable service, especially in my neighborhood, it seems like we lose power all the time, and it's just a running joke down that, again. And so my concern is the welfare of the community, the entire community. But since I live in Dove Country and I experience it quite often, is that, you know, these elderly are the ones that have just been released from hospitals that, you know, it's heat or cold or whatever. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me that why our subdivision seems to lose power so frequently. So if there's anything that can be done to check that equipment, because I know a couple of years ago, there was some major work done because it was just so frequent. It was unreal, and that's when Mayor Scarcella was here, and he made some calls, and I believe you helped him with it, and there were some things replaced, but it helped for a while, but, you know, lately it seems to be happening all over again.
We can certainly investigate that particular neighborhood for you.
And, you know, and I won't go into the area that Councilman Garrett just went in about the businesses, because that's our livelihood, that's our lifeline. And for them to lose any product because of power loss, I know this last time, I think I was out for maybe 10 hours. I ended up throwing everything out from the fridge because I just didn't trust, you know, the things that I felt that, you know, may be contaminated because of being without refrigeration for so long. So, you know, it has an impact, but I think my main concern is the people that can't afford. Thank goodness, you know, and yes, there's a backlog. I spoke to them a couple of months ago, and we won't get our generator till January, February. And so, you know, I'm now forced to, you know, the reliability to me is not there, and I'm having to be forced to buy this because, you know, I'm getting older as my neighborhood is, and, you know, just, you know, the you know, and I have neighbors coming in asking me, you know, well, how much, and, you know, so I go through the whole deal. So there is, you know, a concern, you know, and they do, of course, you know that I'm on council, and I'm going, look, you know, we don't have any, we can, and thank you so much for you and your team coming out. We really appreciate it, and I know I you know, but it's frustration, you know, that why does it keep happening? And I know there's certain events that can't, you know, you can't predict, you know, such as the winter storm, but and the staging and other parts of the state or states that you have to send crews to help them with their natural disasters. But, you know, I think that if we could, and it sounds like y'all do a lot already, but it seems like, as Councilman Garrett said, some of these communities are older, and whether they get inspected as frequently or not, you know, I would like to see that, but I think I would like an explanation on the grid because I don't understand it.
We will get a deeper dive for Dove Country for you and provide it back. And just in general, everybody in Stafford's not on the same circuit, and there's individual feeders throughout the city and individual loops if you're underground overhead distribution. So that's why we have to kind of narrow it down to what we were targeting, which was the main issue that we have, but we can certainly get something specific for Dove Country and explain it to you.
Well, I know during, what was that big storm, Harvey, I believe? There was one person across the street from me that had power and everybody else was out. And they offered to put an extension cord across the street for me. Well, which I thanked them and said, no, thank you.
Distribution at different times was built, so they were on a different, but that was nice of them, though.
It certainly was. I did appreciate the offer. But anyway, I'm just frustrated, and my neighbors are frustrated, and it seems like the frequency in Dove Country is more than, you know, all different council members live in different subdivisions. But I would really appreciate if y'all could look into that and see if there can be anything that's pinpointed.
I'm sure somebody on my team has written it down or memo notes for that.
Infrared or visual or whatever it is that you have to do.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, you know, I can relate to her story. I live next to her subdivision, not in the same subdivision. When they've been losing the power, I've been getting calls, and then they asked me, I didn't lose power. I must have you lost power, probably about half an hour, 1 hour or something like that. And they called me and said, Ken, do you have power? I said, yes. Oh, because you are a councilman, is that right? Then I literally took her name and said, go and look at her house. She does not have, she's a councilwoman, and she does not have power. So this is what is going on. We are all getting calls.
I understand that completely.
So she lost power, and I didn't lose. But I had the reason to tell them they believed me, then otherwise they wouldn't believe. Hey, you are a councilman, that's why you wouldn't.
I understand that
And
completely.
they came and checked.
Yes.
I
I got
understand that
knocks on the door.
Councilman Jones?
I want to take a moment just to commend you on being here and bringing everybody, not leaving any stone unturned. I mean, you know, if there was a question that was going to be asked, I really appreciate your proactive preparation, because that's what you're presenting here, how we can be proactive. Of course, you don't control the elements and you really can't predict, but only God can predict the future, so we don't know what's going to happen. But I certainly want to commend you for coming out and being so thorough in your presentation. I mean, I've never heard a more passionate story about trees. It's been a long time, other than from our mayor. Only person who can match that is our mayor, because he gets going too. I'm sure you've heard him match your stories. But I commend you, Mr. Robinson, and you have your solutions person here too. So I know there's a telephone pole that's in the middle of a road somewhere. That's another story, but we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, but to say about the aging of the grid in different areas, you know, to look at Councilwoman Rosas's neighborhood, I'm almost of the mindset that we need, and I'm sure the mayor is thinking there's a more holistic approach. One neighborhood at a time, though, maybe you'll find the problem in that particular neighborhood that'll lead you to the solution, the holistic solution to our problem. So good luck with that, all right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank you for you bring the whole team. Actually, I think this presentation is really helping the citizen know what's going on. Because when they're out of power, they call us. And they thinking we have a power to call you.
Right.
And you're going to fix it right away. If you don't call somebody, they're thinking we didn't do our job.
Right.
And so, you know, I hope maybe we can put some PowerPoint presentation on our city website. So maybe somebody, resident want to know why. This is an easy way to explain to them, say, even mayor and city council, we don't have a power. We don't have the power to turn the lights off.
I think this is downloaded on this one, so you guys can take that.
Yeah. And also, I know a lot of people love tree. I just heard you guys give away 1,500 trees, give a free tree giveaway next Saturday.
Yes.
I'd like to
30th.
see if we can get the information sent to, maybe we can send to the secretary, we can post on the website. I think our citizens will love, everybody love trees, especially from CENTERPOINT.
Yeah, I think that was on the 30th, right, Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can give information to our city secretary, maybe we can post on the Facebook or social media, so our resident can get a free tree.
We'll send it over tonight or tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other member have any questions? Let me ask this. LED street lights, who wants to tell us about where, when, and how?
Glad you asked that, Mr. Santos. I had my ace in the hole right back here for us. So, go ahead.
We can talk about it. I don't know if you have a specific question that you want to answer, or if you want me to just talk about
Yeah, where, when, and how?
it. We can do it now. Actually, we sent already an agreement to y'all. So yeah, have that in place that can be signed, and we can make it happen.
So it's probably held up in legal.
No, one thing we should legal had to see
It's somewhere. If we haven't sent it to the correct person, we can definitely resend that.
I see somebody wanting to
Okay.
speak.
Oh, no, I reached out and I think this is where it's being held up.
Do y'all have any questions? Do y'all want me to go over anything?
My question, where, when, and how?
As soon as we get that agreement signed, we will have to schedule it. Right now, will probably be 2022 that would happen, but definitely we can make it happen as soon as that agreement is in place. It's just one agreement that needs to be signed, and it's very simple actually, and
Well, I've signed 8,000 pieces of paper since I got here, so maybe I've already
This was
signed.
two pages.
No, you have not signed that one. Because I've not seen that one at all, so I know you're not
The
signed
one
that one.
thing, I don't sign anything until I ask his legal approval, so.
Definitely.
We'll get on it.
If you have any questions, I mean, we can let us know. If there's anything there that we can explain a little bit better, or you know, try to figure it out how we can make it happen.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Robinson.
If I may, one last thing I want to leave everybody with. We do have a service called Power Alert Service. With that, you can register online at CenterpointEnergy.com. You can register your phone or email or actually cell phone to get a text that will notify you once the power is out.
Wow.
And with that, it will tell you your power is out. It will give you a general statement. There's a power outage at or near 102 Main, and it will give you an estimated restoration time. And so let's say you're out, you're not even at the house, and you know your power's out, you have a restoration time. If it's in the summer, you might stay at the mall a little longer because it's cool, and then go back once it's restored. Then you will get that notice that says the power outage has been resolved. If you get home and it's not been resolved, it tells you to go ahead and give us a call. But a lot of folks are signing up for that Power Alert service to keep them notified when they're not at the house as far as their ETA for restorations or if they have a power outage.
Sir, I signed for it. I am getting that information.
You're getting that information. So that time when they called you, you said, I didn't get a notification and the power's on. So I'm glad to know that it's working. So I do want to make sure that yourselves as well as the residents are aware of that option to get that information passed on to you.
Okay, let me go to, does any member of the public present or virtual have any question or comment on item 7? Any member of the public have question or comment on item 7? I don't see or hear anybody. Ms. Robinson, I want to thank you, and I want everybody with CenterPoint to stand up, because I want to see how many are here.
We're here, so. Like our motto, always there, we're here, so. Again, and if I don't have the answer, these guys
Mr. Robinson goes
do.
prepared, no matter what the question is, he's got somebody that he's gonna reach out to. We want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for responding and reaching out.
Yes,
From
sir.
the first time it went out all the way, I don't know how many times we talked, because I haven't spoken to him in 3 years, but we've become quite acquainted in the past several months. And they said when we have all the facts together, and they did all their research, they wanted to come tell the story about what possibly was their fault, and a dump truck driving down the street with its bed up and hitting the poles is not their fault. So thank you all very much. You were very responsive, and we look forward to continued keeping the lights on in Stafford.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, one last thing, hook 'em horns.
Oh, there you go. Come on, Art.
Well, I
couldn't let you get out of here. I couldn't let you get out of here.
Say a word. Don't all of y'all leave yet. I sat in Kyle Field for years watching this young man run up and down the field, and if he'd have had some blocking, he'd have probably been a Heisman. But he had no
That's very
blocking.
kind of you.
So I saw another gig 'em. So how many of my people are here tonight? Just get them up.
3 or 4 here tonight.
Thank y'all for coming. Thank you for coming.
No, they are my people too, you know, I showed you the certificate I got from Anna.
Well, I keep forgetting that.
What?
Yes.
I tell you, you wasted,